Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Dice Talks, Dice Cultural Initiative, where it brings all the great interviews with all the great people from our amazing hobby, from board games, always with the fun and good mood that you are used to. My name is Cesar Mendes, and I'll be hosting the episode today. And with me, I have this fantastic gentlemen, SHEM Phillips and SAM MACDONALD. If you don't know him, you will for sure today, okay? And it will be a fantastic conversation for sure. Sam and Shem, thank you very much for being here and give me the pleasure of talking a little bit with you regarding your projects and to know a little bit more about you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Okay. So, weird silence, right? That's fine. Okay. So, first of all, I'm a huge fan. As you can see, well, in this side, I'm a huge fan of a lot of stuff that you do. So I really enjoyed it. So it's going to, and I'm easy to know a little bit more. But for those that really don't know who you are, and would like to know a little bit more, please tell us who are you, how do you came into the board gaming world, and just to let you know, to let us know exactly who you are and what you enjoyed, basically. Okay, let's start with Sam.
I'm Sam MacDonald, otherwise known as SJ MacDonald on Board Game Geek and on the box covers of our game designs. I've been a game designer for 4 years now, I think. So my first design was Architects of the West Kingdom alongside Shem, and we've just been designing games since. So Paladins, Viscounts, the Circadians line. So you'll see that there's Circadians, Chaos Order, and First Light behind me. And we're working on the South Tigris trilogy now. So I'm having a whole bunch of fun designing and playing board games. It's been a blast.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Shem, what about you?
Yeah.
Tell us who you are.
Shem, obviously. I started designing and publishing, I guess it's 12 years now, back in 2009. And did it for like 6 years, kind of as a hobby, just making games on the side. And it was very much like homemade kit set type games, or I like to call them like boutique games. So no shrink wrap, nothing like that. And then I kind of got into Kickstarter and stuff, found some like good attention for our games through that. And our first game was Shipwrights to the North Sea, and that kind of launched our whole medieval trilogy that we've been doing, or 3 trilogies coming up now. And yeah, then Sam came on the scene for Architects, and we've been doing that for 4 years now. So been a long journey for me, but yeah, it started out as a hobby and kind of built it into a business. So very blessed.
Okay, great. So, and what about games itself? When do you remember start? What was your first game that really stuck it in your mind and make you love board games?
Oh, I'll answer that. I'll answer that. So for me, it started with Risk. Risk when I was growing up. I loved playing Risk. I loved facing my cousins who are older than me and my dad, and we would just sit around the table for hours. And there would be all this tension, all of this table talk. You'd break for lunch, and then you'd tell your cousin, right, are you going to go and attack Australia over there? And you try and set up these little alliances, even though it's not really an alliance game. So I have a lot of fond memories playing Risk, but that was when I was really young. And then I probably had about 10 years of not really being a board gamer. And then Shem and a few other people introduced me to these modern board games. I played Raiders of the North Sea when I was in a band with Shem. So he showed me an early prototype, and that blew my mind. I also played a lot of Pandemic. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she got this book voucher, and we went to the bookstore, and there was nothing really that she wanted to read, nothing that she wanted to buy. So I said, how about we buy this board game, Pandemic? And one Sunday afternoon, my friends and I, we just played it back to back to back. I think we played it like 9 or 10 times. And that was really the game that fully got me into the hobby. That afternoon, I was now someone who owned a board game and who was going to go out and buy more and more board games, just because I realized how much fun we could have interacting with friends around a table. It was just so refreshing from the, computer games background they had before then. It was just something fresh and new, and it was really a good time. So that was probably 4 or 5 years ago, that big day of pandemic. Really was a blast.
The big day of pandemic. It's been the last 2 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I got into it more as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid playing Scrabble and Cluedo and that kind of stuff. The classic Monopoly, all that great stuff. So I always enjoyed playing games as a kid. And then I actually started working on my own game before I knew anything about the hobby game kind of community. So I had this idea for a little family roll and write game. Not roll and write, roll and move. Very classic kind of roll the dice, move your pawn and do stuff on your turn style of game. Set out to make that, and then while making that game, or after releasing it, that's when a friend of mine's like, oh, you should try this game Guitar that I've got. And then he introduced me to a few other people locally. We went to a local convention of like 100 people and played all these wonderful games like Le Havre and Power Grid and stuff. And then I just went out like Sam and just started buying games. So Citadels, Ticket to Ride, and then slowly got, all the games that each of us have like adorning our shelves these days. So yeah, that's kind of my journey.
Okay, great, fantastic. And Sam, you already pointed a little bit, but how did you two meet each other? So it was casual stuff, or...
we joined a band together. So SHEM was in a band, and they were looking for a drummer, and I'm a drummer, and the guitarist, SHEM's friend Blake, he worked for my dad as a builder. And one day he was around at my house and he heard me drumming, or actually quite a few times. Apparently they were having smoke or having a coffee at my house, and I was just there drumming. And he said that sometimes he could make out the songs. So we liked a lot of the same music. He could make out the songs that I was playing. And anyway, he told my dad that he was in this band looking for a drummer. And then my parents were like, well, what about my son? He can play drums. And so he sent me this message, and I came along. I met these guys. We had a jam, and we just got on really, really well, and I was so blessed that they wanted me to be in their band. They must have been desperate to have a drummer like me, but no, it was heaps of fun. SHEM lives about an hour drive from me, so we can catch up fairly regularly as well.
Okay, that's great. And no. Do you still have the band?
We were gigging and recording for about 5 years.
Okay.
And we had a good time with it, but it took a lot of, I don't know, there were a few reasons why we split up. We don't have to go into that now, but we're all still good friends.
That's great. Okay, so let's move into a little bit about into the board gaming. So on the last few years, you gave us you two gave us a lot of good gaming stuff with the North Trilogy and the West, right? And we have a little bit more coming, right? In a nutshell, for people that don't know, what is this series of games that you have come up with? What was the idea? How do you came out with this development's idea of having these trilogies from North and South and West, etc.? Explain this a little bit.
So once it's all done and dusted, there'll basically be 12 games, all set kind of between 800 to 1000 AD. The North focuses on the Vikings, so there's 3 games in that trilogy. And then there's the West is the Franks, which is the old French kingdom of West Francia. And then we're now going to the South Tigris, which is centered around Baghdad. So it's the Arabs, the Saracens. And then the East is going to be the Byzantines, which will be another 3 or 4 years away before we even start thinking about talking about those games. But it started out with me making shipwrights. I wanted to make a game about building ships as come up the core mechanism at least. And then through some research, I discovered that there's a wide range of different types of Viking longships. They have different classes for all these ships, like about 14 or 15 different names for different ships, which is quite cool. And then when I started researching that more, I thought, oh, the Viking culture and the Viking characters that you can have are so fun. You got like shield maidens and berserkers and barbarians, all these cool kind of character names. So I just got excited about using that kind of, I guess, shell as a universe. And then after kickstarting that first game, people were kind of eager for more. It was the first game that Nico had ever illustrated, so people had never seen his artwork before. They wanted more of this kind of Viking cartoony feel. So I set out to then design Raiders of the North Sea. And then in my head, I was like, let's just make a trilogy. Why just do 2 games? I'm going to do a trilogy. And already had the name for Explorers kind of, you know, quite early on, knowing the story of the Vikings going from like building these ships to then going out and raiding and then going exploring even further away. It was like a nice narrative to tell. And then once that trilogy was done, the fact that it's the North trilogy, kind of people go, well, is there going to be a South and East or West? And of course, I have no self-control, so I just thought, let's just do it. Let's just go ahead and do it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So it wasn't something that you had an idea, so it came up from the community, actually. To continue that. That's amazing. That's amazing. So you had basically 3 games from the North trilogy, the 3 games from the West trilogy, right? So we have new stuff coming, right? So you actually have a Kickstarter coming up very soon, right? Regarding some couple of expansions for the Viscounts. Tell us a little bit more of those expansions and what we hope to see on that Kickstarter.
Should I talk about that, Sam?
Yeah, I can. I need to remember what's in each expansion. So we've got Keeper of Keys. I don't know. I think we've got Keeper of Keys and we've got Gates of Gold.
Okay.
So one of the expansions is giving you new ways of basically, because it's a deck building game, right? And we hadn't done that trope of, you know, collecting cards that are actually just worth points at the end of the game and they sort of bloat up your deck, which is the classic thing that Dominion does, right? And so we're experimenting with what if we can have some cards that are in your deck that aren't super strong for action taking, but at the end of the game, they're going to give you points. And these cards actually going to give you focus. So, you know, you're going to get points for doing certain things. And players can get these over the course of the game. So one of the expansions adds that, but those cards also, we love multi-use cards. Like multi-use cards is just such a great mechanism because you can't design a bad card. Like even if the ability long-term isn't that great, then the dismiss ability could be really strong. And the other thing that's cool about multi-use cards is that I might want the long-term ability, but you might want the immediate, and there's player interaction there. You don't have to grab the long-term ability to stop me, to block me. You can just dismiss that card to get in my way. So these are multi-use cards. Players can either add them to their deck, which are really not going to do too much until the end of the game, where they'll score, they've got some focus, or they can dismiss them for a really powerful action. Another thing that we're adding in that expansion, I think this is Gates of Gold. The other thing we're adding in that expansion is more ways to spend resources. One of the things we found with Viscounts is sometimes you just end up with all of these resources that you can't really use. Maybe you're getting a whole bunch of gold and you're not planning to go to the castle. We didn't want resources to go straight into points. We don't necessarily like doing that too often if we don't have to. So we've added some extra powerful kind of free actions that people can do with those resources. So they could spend, 3 resources to do a rearrange of their tableau, or they can start using any resource as coins. And the way that you get these abilities is you've got this little board that your manuscripts slot into. And once you've got one of each color, once you've got your first set, each of them sort of unlocks this new ability, which carries on for the rest of the game. So there's 3 new abilities, or the 4th ability is being able to interact with these new cards no matter where you are. So that's what that expansion adds. More uses for resources, a little bit of a buff to the manuscript strategy, and these multi-use cards. And then the second expansion is adding a few things, but one of them is public buildings. So there's these 3 buildings that you can go out and build, and you can upgrade one of your buildings that you've already put out there. That essentially comes back to your player board, and you now take one of these public buildings and put it on that same spot, which is going to be worth a whole bunch of points, and it gives you this new like ongoing ability throughout the rest of the game. So one of these buildings, which is the guild hall replacement, is one permanent criminal icon. So you now are great at every action. You've got one stat towards every single action in the game, but you're going to be getting all these debts and all this corruption. So it's this kind of new strategy. It just makes the building strategy have this higher point ceiling, so you can be doing the buildings a little bit longer, and there's more interaction around, there's a race now to get these 3 public buildings because they are quite high points. As well as adding ways to get more heroes. So we've got all of these heroes now. We've added a whole bunch of heroes, and players can now have more than one hero over the course of the game. There's a few other things that I've missed out, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, great. Anything that you would like to add, Chuck?
Keeper of Keys is these new chest tiles, which basically slot below your 3 card slots on your player board, and they will say that when a certain card drops into the slot, either you got this extra power or you get this immediate effect.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main focus of the Keeper of Keys, is that you get in these chests which kind of buff your player board, and you can kind of combo more and plan more and stuff as well, focus more, which we like doing. Yeah.
Okay, good. And also I saw the unboxing that you did, and you have new player boards, right? So that so that's also very, very cool. So you're upgrading a little bit also the components. That's also very good. So in terms of the West Kingdom, after this,
I think so.
done.
Yeah.
Right?
Sad face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
West Kingdom was a lot of stuff, right? Right. It was a lot of stuff. It was very long years of getting very good goodness, and so it's we always say, it's done.
There could be some promos coming. We don't know, but probably no more big expansions for sure. Yeah,
I could imagine another Architects one, but
that's nice.
pushing it. But
what about...
I don't think we're going to do it. But I definitely cannot see a Paladins expansion. And after this Viscounts, there's just so many paths. I cannot see a Viscounts expansion. And then Architects, we probably don't need to do one because there's already so many cards. Yeah, so I'm just sad to say that it's done.
I love Architects. And it's growing, right? But you can just grow into a certain point, right? So in terms of the board, but it's a lovely game also. I really enjoyed it also. So in terms of moving forward from the West trilogy, we have a new trilogy going, right? Or coming up, okay? That you announced not some time ago. Talk to us about what is this a little bit more. You already touched a little bit on those points, but talk us a little bit more of what is the point of this trilogy, where are you focused, what changes? Because all of your games, it's always something that I really enjoyed in your games, is that it always brings something new, right? Something a little bit different. The thing that I love, for example, from Raiders was the single meeple, right? You put the meeple, you take one. So that's simple and extremely effective, right? Architects was that of putting more guys on the board, and you get more resources, and then sending people to jail. You always have something a little bit different. What we have now.
Maybe I'll talk to the mechanical focus, and then Sam can talk to the thematic focus because he had tons of research on that. So in the north, we have this idea of military strength. We have your crew. We have like glory and death, and those kind of mechanical themes that come through the games. And in the west, we have virtue, corruption, debts, all that kind of stuff. So when thinking of the next trilogy, we want to make sure that we don't sort of touch on that same stuff mechanically. Well, I say mechanical, it's like mechanical themes, I guess you could say. So we were trying to think, how can we make this trilogy stand apart from those two, to be different so they belong together, and we landed on the idea of using dice, because Raiders does have 2 dice, but that's about it, and they're not that like impactful in the game. So we want to make all 3 games in the South trilogy use dice for action taking in some way, or use dice in some strong way within the games. So the first game is going to be dice bag building. Then we've got dice action selection, almost worker placement-ish. And the third game we're still developing, but it's probably going to have some kind of action taking mechanism using dice as well. So that's kind of what we got at, and we're also wanted to add a bit more interaction mechanically as well. So we've added in this mechanism which we're calling influence, where players can often place an influence on usually a card in the kind of public area, and then if any other player wants to interact with that card, they have to basically pay them for it. So it becomes a slight, very light area control kind of thing going on, where players have a bit more interaction with each other, a bit more competition over things. But yeah, and then Sam did tons of research on the theme of the South, lots of book reading and just general nerdy work that Sam likes doing. So maybe he could speak a bit to that.
Yeah, sure. So the people group that we're focusing in on are the Abbasids, and I just got sort of obsessed with this. The Abbasid Empire, what they called was the golden age of science and technology. So around the 800 ADs, the Caliph, who was basically the king in Baghdad, he had a really good tutor. And so he was just so obsessed with science. You know, when you have a great teacher and then they just make you want to go out and study that subject. It must have been something like that. And so he set out this royal decree. What we're going to do is we're going to send all these people out, and I want you to go and grab all of these scrolls and manuscripts of wisdom and of science and mathematics and philosophy from Greece, from China, from India, from all corners of the globe, and bring them back here to Baghdad. And they built this massive library type thing called the House of Wisdom. They brought it back there, and they did maybe the world's biggest translation project ever. They translated all of these scrolls and manuscripts into Arabic just because they really wanted to know and understand. In the same era, we had a guy called Al-Khwarizmi, who was like basically the father of algebra. And there were like a lot of like astronomical kind of like observations as well. They figured out the circumference of the Earth to a very, very close, it was very, very close to what is actually accurate. Yeah. They
spaces, right?
Yeah, they used what's called like an astrolabe, and they walked 1 degree north, and then they walked 1 degree south, and they already knew about 360 degrees for a globe. And then they figured out how many steps they had done in the 1 degree both ways, and then they averaged that, and then they times it by 360, something like that, and they got super, super close, which was crazy. Imagine counting your paces and that being your way of measuring distance, and you wouldn't be able to veer off too much. Yeah.
It's a good punishment.
So that right. Whole theme is what we base the first game around. Wayfarers, the circumference thing, because when they're walking 1 degree of the Earth, even though it's only 1/360th, it's still a really, really long distance. And so they're bound to see things along the way, and they're bound to make these observations about the mountains and the cities and the rivers and vistas and all these things that they see, and probably also charting the skies, using the stars for navigation. So in Wayfarers, you're doing this. You're exploring, and you're sending pigeons back to the House of Wisdom, telling people of everything that you've seen, and you're building up this massive tableau of cards with water to the right and land to the left, and above both of those things is space cards like stars and comets and planets and things like that. So players are going to be building their own tableau, and over the course of the game they'll see that they've done this really, really beautiful thing, and it's going to have Miko's art, and it'll be quite satisfying, I think, when people get that on their hands. So yeah, this whole trilogy, to answer your question, this whole trilogy is about the Abbasids and the scientific advancements that they made over those 200 years or so.
That's fantastic. That's really really nice theme. And sometimes we don't look into the theme that much in these games, and looks like that Sam really does his homework very well in that sense, right? So, and in terms of release dates for this, I suppose it's going to be Kickstarters, right? So, as it has been, in terms of release dates, what we are.
So we'll probably keep to one base game per year. So we're looking at probably March or April for Wayfarers, and then a year later for the other two. And then we might do like a final Kickstarter for some expansions if that ends up happening. But yeah, so over 3 or 4 years probably we'll get them all released.
That's good. Actually, we didn't mention when it's the Kickstarter for
That'll
the
be January
expansion
11th.
for Icons.
So yeah, very soon.
Okay, so a few days, just right, a few days just before after this the release of this interview. That's good. So guys, don't sleep much on it. Okay, so in terms of this, it's very good that Sam gave us that idea in terms of how the theme comes up, right? But yet you have all of these trilogies have so interesting and different mechanics, and they each one has its own identity, but they are all related, right? And even you try to do, and you did something very interesting with the Tom saga that was there. So they completely change a little bit how you can look into all these games and how you interconnect with them. Tell us a little bit more about the concept behind this of how and what does it mean in terms for you as a designer. I see that Sam is more on the mechanic side, and Sam is a lot more on the theme side, and making sure that the theme is also there. At least it's the perspective that I had. What this meant to you as a designer to have these kind of worries and this kind of message that you.
Sam is very much mechanics as well.
Yeah.
Sam often has like the early ideas for the mechanisms and stuff. Yeah, don't be deceived. He's definitely a nerd. No, we're very much, I guess, Eurogamers, but Sam also enjoys a lot more like high interaction games than I would. So I'm more of the Care Bear, and he likes some more conflict. But we have this good middle ground where we find these games we both enjoy that are like very interesting decisions in the game. Things that make you want to go deeper in the game, and where you can explore strategies. So we have this like middle ground that we really like to play in. So I don't know where I got with that, but I just want to say Sam's also a nerd, not just me. But
and Shim's. Oh yeah, you go.
Oh, you're gonna say I like world building, don't you? I was
going to say that Shim is a massive
building,
theme guy as well. Like he does a lot of world building.
Yeah.
And like he did a lot of the research for the West, and he obviously did all of it for the North. So I just jumped in with the South. I don't know. I was just interested for some reason, really interested, and I didn't know much about because I had known of these people called the Saracens, which is people understand what that means, but it's just an anglicized version of a people group, which is actually a whole bunch of different people groups at a whole bunch of different times. They never called themselves the Saracens. So I wanted to know, who are the people that we're really focusing on here? So it's the Abbasids, but yeah.
Yeah, we try and we want to keep our games fresh. Like we don't want to just reskin games we've done before or just copy other people's games. We definitely take inspiration from other games. So we try and walk that line of like making our games feel familiar yet something new as well. So a lot of that comes through iconography and the visuals. So once you've played Paladins, you jump into Viscounts, you kind of know, that card means discard, that means a free townsfolk. Like you kind of understand the iconography. But there's a lot of things we like doing. We like having like people cards, like townsfolk cards or crew cards in our games that kind of give flavor and personality to our games. So you won't often find a game of ours that has no cards in it. Explorers is probably one of the exceptions because I really like tile placement games. But often there's quite focus on cards, good decisions on when to play a card versus hiring a card or throwing the card away. So yeah, a lot of those things are always underlying in our games, I think. So you've got your apprentices and architects, then you've got your like townsfolk and paladins and viscounts. So people will know those kind of systems that we like, but we always want to add something fresh. So with viscounts, for example, the idea of the moving tableau that Sam designed, of the cards go down and drop off, no different effects when you play them, when they're in there, when they drop off, like things like that we haven't done. We hadn't done a rondel before, so just trying to add mechanisms that we want to explore while still keeping our games kind of grounded in what we know people have sort of come to expect from us, because we don't want to do these games that people go, oh, that's not kind of what I hoped for, that's not what I expected. They kind of get what they were hoping for and something else on top of that. So it's kind of our goal. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. Okay, that's moving on from these trilogies. You also have your last Kickstarter was the Circadians, the Chaos Order, right? Tell us more about this game. I see something over there in Sam's side a little bit. Tell us what is this game? Okay, how was the Kickstarter, and if people are able to join still after.
This game is a real gamble. It's a real risk because it is not similar to any of the other games we've released before. It's not a Euro game. There are definitely Euro game sensibilities, and there's definitely some of my trademark design things that I like to do in games, with like lots of engine building, lots of paths, things like that. And there are ways to, boost your economy, things like that. But it is not a Euro game. It is a war game. It's a dudes on a map game. We have 6 different factions based on this planet Rye, which we discovered and experimented with in Circadian's First Light. So it's a follow-up to that game. But that was very peaceful. That was about negotiating with the locals. The humans are negotiating with the aliens, and they're giving them resources and trying to boost their relationship and all those things. But in this, it's all-out battle. There are these relics that have sprung up from the earth, and people don't trust what they're going to do, what the other factions would do with all of the power that comes from these relics. I think I've always wanted to design a game like Risk. I think a game with a lot of the modern sensibilities that Risk doesn't have. Maybe not streamlined, but just a better Risk with more depth, that sort of thing. And I've also really wanted to experiment with asymmetry in a big way. So each of these factions are very, very different. They have different player powers. They have leaders that do different things. They each have a unique building which does different things. And the main thing which is really big about the asymmetry is they all have this unique win condition. So they all have these different goals and ways that they win the game. But as well as that unique win condition, there's always this global win condition also. So any faction can win, even if they're not doing super well in their own win condition, they can win by controlling all of the relic regions. And if they do that, then they've won the game. So this game is about 3 to 4 hours, but it's really, really epic. It's that long because really we didn't want players to feel like if they lose a battle, they're out of the game. And so if the game was 1 hour, 1.5 hours, you lose a battle, you feel like you're out. In this game, you've got 10, 12 battles over the course of the game. And so you can lose a bunch of them and still have a chance to win. So the fact that it's long is actually meaning it's more forgiving. And it's long, but there's not much downtime. The way that we designed the mechanisms. Sorry, I haven't even said it's a co-design with my mate, Zach Smith. But the way that we designed the round structure and the mechanisms is not like a lot of dudes on a map games. Games like Risk and Root are basically like, hey, here, it's your turn. You get to do all of these things. You go and do all these things, and then you stop, and then you wait for everyone to do all of that stuff until it comes back to you. Here, we go through all these phases. People build, and then the other players will build, and then you harvest. The other players would harvest. Then you recruit. The other players would recruit. So even though it's long, you're not waiting very long to do your next action. And so you're engaged throughout the whole thing.
Okay, that's really cool and really different. And I could see there a little bit of the geek side now for Sam, for sure. As he was starting talking about it, it noticed. Okay, so, and do we expect more for Sarkanians in the future?
Yes. Yeah, we this is not like a trilogy. We're not planning to like do 3 games and then move on. So we don't know how many games we'll do. But we are very keen to keep exploring the universe. It's been a lot of fun, like building the world, thinking up all the different alien factions and characters and stuff. So, but don't expect to see all these games to be similar. Whereas the medieval stuff, you know, they're generally this kind of like 60 to 90 minute Euro style game for 1 to 4 players. The Circadian stuff's kind of our playground where we can do what we want. So we've already got a dice placing game. Now we've got this big epic war game. We might do co-ops. We might do, I don't know, whatever else. So it's we could do like a solo campaign. We just don't know. We'll do whatever we want with it, and it's just kind of our fun IP to play around with. So who knows, really? It could be 10 games. It could be 3. We just don't know.
And one of the big wins, I think, with Chaos Order, like really proud of this game. I loved working with Zach, who's my friend who now lives in Italy. But one of the big wins with this is that SHEM started to like it at some point. he doesn't usually like these sorts of games, but over the course of playing it a bunch of times, because he had to, he wrote the rule book, all those sorts of things. He just had to know the game as the publisher and developer. He ended up liking it. I don't know if it's like Stockholm Syndrome, where he's just like stuck with his captor, Chaos Order. But now he's even like thinking up ideas for an expansion. He's thinking up factions, and he's getting to join in on that process. And it really is fun designing an asymmetrical faction. Like, what's their personality going to be? How are they going to interact with all the other factions? It's a nightmare to balance, but it's a blast to design.
That's cool. And actually, another question is, Shem, are you always who write the rule books? Are you the one that writes? Oh, that's good. Congratulations. Very good rule books, to be honest. So it's really nice. Really nice good rule books to read. And, well, I cannot let you finish this conversation before a little surprise afterwards. But I would like to know from you guys, what are we going to see in the future? Okay, both as you as a team of designers, right? And but also individually, and also from Garfield Games. Okay, what can we see from the future? Are we going through this line still for a few years, or are we going to see something new?
So we've got our main kind of 3 lines. We've got the medieval stuff. We've got our Circadian stuff, and our other one is the the Ancient Anthology. So we've got Raise of Scythia and Hadrian's Wall, and we've talked about the Viscounts expansions and about Wayfarers. The next game after that will be, I won't say the name, almost said the name. It's our 3rd game in that series, which is a solo-only campaign game that I've designed. So it's kind of a fully resettable, non-linear campaign game. So you can play it multiple times through. It's going to be roughly about 10 to 12 games each time you play it. Each game is about an hour. And it plays out a little bit like a co-op. It feels like there's no victory points. You're actually playing against the system trying to win. So it's set in ancient China. We are actually doing our solo testing right now through our Discord server. So if you're keen on that, you can go play it. But yeah, that's going to be probably maybe June, July on Kickstarter, and we'll also do reprints of Scythia and Hadrian's Wall at that time. And then later in the year, we're expecting that we'll do some expansions for the 2 Circadians games, First Light and Chaos Order. So the expansion for First Light's been a long time coming, but it's pretty much ready. And then we're doing some new factions for Chaos Order as well. And then the next year, that's all next year. The year after that, it's going to follow up with like the next game in the South Trilogy, and we're going to keep doing more in the Ancient Anthology and maybe some Circadians. But we've got a lot of projects on the go. Sam's been busy helping me with all the South games, with the 4th game in the Ancient Anthology series. Series that we're working on, and also really busy with a few other projects, Sam, that you're working on, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can expect from us going forward, you pointed this out earlier, is that we like to keep things fresh. And so we're not going to put out a game that's been done before. Even if it would be a good game, even if it be a really great game, we're just not going to do that. So, of course, we're going to borrow mechanisms from games. Of course, we're going to, re-implement things that have worked in the past, familiar things like set collecting, worker placement. But we're not going to put out a game if it's not bringing something new to the conversation. We just really hold ourselves to this. We love to try and at least innovate a little bit. So with this fourth game, we've got a lot of positive player interaction, which we have had little bits of in the past, with Viscounts, the links and things like that for the buildings. But this is our most positive player interaction type game that we've ever had. So we're just trying to push the boat out and keep bringing new things to the conversation. So I can't really say what the games are called and what else we're working on, but I think you can expect that from us going forward.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Good to know. I was really happy with the solo campaign and stuff. I'm a solo gamer, so I was really happy with that, and I really enjoyed them playing solo. Okay, guys, I have a little surprise for you. Okay, just a little game that we like to do with our guests. We call it, well, we have a different name in Portuguese, but we call it like over and under. Okay, if you would like to call it. And basically, I'm going to say a word or something like that, okay, related to the board gaming world. And I want to know your opinion if it is overrated or underrated, okay, and why. Just give a little bit of an explanation regarding it, okay, just this way so that we can know a little bit more about you also.
Dangerous.
Sure. That's fine?
Yeah, the fire's going to come out.
Let's start with a good one that I always like to start is wooden cubes. It's over or under?
Definitely not overrated.
Underrated.
You can't overrate a wooden cube. Underrated? They're just wooden cubes, but I don't know. They're exactly what they need to be, I think. Yeah.
Underrated for sure.
Okay.
I mean, like plastic's fine and all, but wood, man. Don't you just love opening that box and it just smells like a dry Euro, and you've got these painted wooden cubes, and it's just the best thing ever. Yeah.
Guilty pleasure, right? Smelling the box. It's always a guilty pleasure, right? Okay, let's go to the other side of things. Miniatures.
Overrated.
Let's start with Sam now.
Overrated. Why overrated? Because you're paying double the price for a game. And sometimes these aren't even big games that sort of justify that price point, if you know what I mean. If it's like a 1 hour experience, I don't need to have miniatures. I understand if it's a big, long, epic game, you're playing the game for 5 hours, you want to be fully immersed, that sort of thing. But I think they often don't justify the price point, even though they do look and feel really cool.
I'd say overrated in Euro games and family games. But behind you got Nemesis, Lord of the Rings, and Cthulhu Death May Die. Like, those games deserve to have miniatures. So the gameplay is enhanced by the miniatures. Whereas, I won't name names, but there's some very light family games or just like what would be great Euros that get like overproduced by having plastic in the box that doesn't need to be there. So I think it's a case by case. For certain games, like, they're awesome. So.
Cool. So the next one that I would like to ask you is art in Euro games or artwork.
Underrated. I think you want to have good art. Yeah. For people who think they don't need artwork, I think that'd be saying that they're underrated. So I'd say, yeah, I'm not confusing myself going backwards and forwards. I think that people underrate the usefulness of art to help bring people into a theme. So not every Euro and most Euros don't need this big, deep thematic immersion into a game. You don't need to feel like you are that person taking those actions and trying to feed your family. But the artwork is what gives you that theme and what makes you want to come down and sit at the table and enjoy the experience. So there's a lot of ugly games out there that could look a lot better, for sure. Yeah.
that are good games, right? And sometimes the art just drops off a little bit.
Oh yeah, I really want to say
Sam,
both.
what about you?
But you want the straight fire. You want me just to say something and not even back it up, right? Overrated, you know. Because okay, so I've had people not play some of my games purely because of art and purely because they don't like it. It's not to their taste. And I want to say, does that really matter? Like, just play. It's a good game. I want to say that to them, that, you know, they're overrating art. But at the same time, I've said the same thing about other games. Like, I've said I don't want this game because of how it looks. So I'm not being very consistent with my own standards that I hold other people to versus, you know, myself. So I think I'm going to say that art is underrated, but there's a big caveat there. Underrated. Here we go.
Okay. Well, the art that you have on your games is fantastic. So I think you at least so I think you take very close attention to the art that you are using. Yeah. So that's good. Okay, one of the things that another thing that I would like to ask you is regarding actually it's a little bit thematic for you. It's regarding the box size.
Talk about it.
If I'll talk about it. Talk about the different games. It doesn't mean to be. For example, if you think that it's sometimes you have oversized box that are not really needed or something like that. So if it is something that it's overrated or underrated, I'm talking in terms of the community, right? So, and what do you think also from your side, if it is something that is overrated or underrated?
I think that I'll take it a bit different. I think that box inserts that have lids and all sorts are overrated. I think they're great, but they're like becoming this thing where people think that every game must have them, otherwise they're falling short, which I think is overrated. They're a luxury item that costs a lot of money, not only to produce but to actually have someone design them. So, but I think I have some inside information, being a publisher, that the reason for big boxes is because of shelf space. It's about putting it on a retail shelf so people go, oh, what's this huge big box? Whereas if you had this tiny little box for Machikoro, no one's going to pick up and look at it. But because it's as big as Lord of the Rings, they're going to pick it up and look at it. So it's a marketing thing. It's nothing to do with the practicality of how it stores on your shelf. It's about how it sells in retail. That's the harsh truth. So our games are actually going bigger next year. Well, not all of them, but the South will be bigger. Mainly because we don't want to keep doing collector's boxes because we don't like doing them. So we're going to make our base games bigger from the start. As much as that pains some people because they like our little boxes, we have to go up in size too. So there you go. It's my boring answer.
Sam.
What was? I think. What was the question? I don't.
What was it? Box sizes. Well, box sizes. If it is something that we take, it's overrated or underrated, or do we take too much attention to it?
Yeah, I think smaller box is better, but I understand why people go big. Yeah. I don't like buying a game that's got a whole bunch. Yeah. I don't like buying a game that's got a whole bunch of air in it. For me, that feels disingenuous, even though I understand Shem's points. I totally understand the points, so I get why they do it. As a consumer, I'm like, why did I just pay for all of this air, you know?
It's like a bag of chips, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's always the top is always empty, right? So it's always a shame, right? But yeah, I agree. I agree in some points with you. Yeah. So, and in terms you did touch one of the things that I would say it's the inserts, Sham. That if it is something that it's being overrated currently or underrated in terms of the board gaming community.
I think they're great. Like I think if publishers want to use them, that's cool. But I think there's this kind of a slight entitlement that's coming in with the actual consumers going like, oh, where's my nice insert? You know, I want that. So I think they're a bit overrated on that point. Yeah, I could change in a year's time. we are doing like we are improving our own systems. We are like First Light and Chaos will have really nice inserts. But I think I don't know. I got Lagrange recently and opened it up and it's just there's no insert, not even a cardboard one, and it doesn't bother me. Like I don't mind putting stuff in bags. So
yeah,
I think it's a consumer attitude, if anything. So yeah, I don't know.
Sam,
overrated.
What about you?
I think I like,
Overrated.
I like inserts if they actually make setup and pack down easier. But already baggies, you can do quite a lot with baggies to make setup and pack down pretty quick. So inserts that are just about like how things are stored in the box but don't really help the setup, I'm not into it.
Okay. Yeah, it's a mix, right? For example, you Shem, you were talking about these games that I have with miniatures, right? In that sense, a little insert makes a little bit more sense, probably, right? So to have it, especially if you like to paint miniatures like that, so to store them correctly. Yeah. So, but in terms of hero games with the pieces and stuff like that, yeah, it's a mix. So, all right. Guys, unfortunately, it's all the time that we have, okay? It was a real pleasure to be talking with you, okay? And to everyone in there, you've been listening to the Dice Talks, which is an initiative from Dice Cultural, where basically we talk, and now we talk with these two very respectable gentlemen in the board gaming community, which was a pleasure to know a lot more about your games, about your projects, and what you have built until now, and what you'll be releasing soon. So, in terms of if you liked this video, okay, just don't forget to do those three little things: to do the like, just put subscribe, and click on the bell so that you can be notified when we launch new videos. And also, you can always find us basically everywhere. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, etc. Okay, you can find us. Just put the comments either below or just one of these channels so that we can continue with this conversation. Okay, and if you have some other questions, so that we can try to help them and to reply to you regarding them. Also, don't forget that every Friday we do have our board gaming nights where we all join together to have some games and also to not only to learn but to talk a little bit about games. And also, guys, Sam and Shem, we'll have your contacts and basically all the information below, but anywhere that you like to share with us where we can find you very easily. For example, you mentioned the Discord channel.
Yeah, if you just go to garthel.com, you'll find a link to our Discord, to our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So that's the best place to go. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you don't follow Shem, Sam, or Garfield Games, come on, guys. What you're waiting for? They have great stuff. Okay, and if you like this video and you like the games that they have, please share this with everyone. Share with your family, with your friends. If you like it, for sure, they will too. Okay. Again, thank you very much for your time here, and let's talk. Let's keep the conversation below. And Shem and Sam, talk to you later then. And
thanks. Bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.